Hello and welcome to the second episode of Creator Spotlight Season 3 from The Interface. Creator Spotlight is our series where we talk to creators about what they make and do and how they got started. Today I'm joined by Alex Goy. Welcome.
Hi, you're right.
Hi Alex. You alright? How you doing?
All good, all good. A little under the weather, so apologies, audience. This might have been out a little earlier, but I completely lost my voice and was mute when we were supposed to record this, and I still feel like death. But otherwise, good. It's too much work and definitely not too much play. That's what's done it.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, 100%. Hundo.
Yeah. So for people not too sure much about you, what's your main sort of background? So obviously you're a motoring journalist.
Yeah, so I make it's quite difficult to say exactly what I do because sometimes it generates more questions than it answers. But basically, I make stuff about cars for people that want to pay me to do it. So some of it's editorial. I do some commercial stuff. I do some behind the scenes things for some people that you will or you might have seen, but you don't know I had anything to do with it. That kind of thing. Or spend my day just mucking around on Twitter.
I mean, one of them is pretty good. So
one of them's pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah. There's quite an interesting for the interface. I started reviewing cars recently, and it is quite a black box a little bit, and a little bit it's like kind of like for people on the outside, they're not too sure how it all works. And
yeah. It's whenever I meet someone new, they go, "Oh, so what do you do?" And I say, "Well, I'm a journalist." They go, "Oh, what do you write about?" And I go, "Cars." And they go, "What?"
Yeah.
And I go, "Well, what the industry? Do you do this?" And it's actually kind of, you can specialize within it. So I tend to do new, fast, and shiny. There are people that do the industry side of things. There are people that do kind of chauffeur cars. There are people that do commercial vehicles. There are motorsport, because they go, "Oh, like F1." You go, "No, I actually can't stand F1. I find it incredibly boring." There's a whole different industry. There's motorsport journalism that does that. And they go, "So how do you review cars? Do you go to dealers?" "No, I ring up press offices and they have fleets specifically for idiots like us and for marketing reasons and for, putting on telly shows and all that." So, I ring, if I have a reason to book in a car, I'll call them, and then a few weeks later a car will appear. And they're like, "What?" I was like, "I know, it's really weird, isn't it?" It's a really strange job. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm very lucky to be able to do it, but it is weird.
Yeah, it is. I'd agreed. How did you get your start into doing it from a very
It's kind of a hot topic for me at the moment, in the fact that automotive journalism is kind of hard to get into. So I did it. So I graduated in 2008, which makes me feel quite old. Yes, you're looking like you're actually picturing what year at school you were in, and you probably were in primary school still, weren't you? He's
Roughly.
nodding.
Yeah.
He's nodding. So I graduated in 2008, which you probably won't remember, but some of the listeners might remember, is when all the money fell off. It was the global recession kicked off in 2008, so the biggest thing since Black Wednesday in 1992. I remember it quite keenly. I was in the States on a post-like uni road trip with some friends, and we were all in LA, and one night we had loads of money, and the next night we had none. Just our currency just became worthless overnight. It was quite incredible. I'd realised halfway through my degree, I did a PR degree, kind of a drunken whim. Long story, but yeah, ended up doing a PR degree and realising I didn't like it. I wasn't very good at PR. I didn't particularly want to do it, but the degree had its interesting points and it got me into places that I wanted to be in. So we did that. But yeah, so the plan was leave university, get some work experience at a magazine, then be brilliant, become the next Clarkson and retire at 50. Like that was the plan. What happened was the entire universe lost all its money. There were huge redundancies and layoffs at magazines. Loads of people who weren't freelance were then freelance, but they still needed people to do work experience stuff. So I ended up interning for about 18 months.
Wow.
Now, the only reason I was able to do that is because basically all of my family had died and I could afford to be a bum, basically be a bum and do lovely things. So I was able to kind of pay my way through it without much problem, which makes me part of a bigger problem because the industry itself right now is full of middle-class white men, which is it's becoming more and more problematic by the day, because that means there isn't anyone. The only voices that are represented are middle-aged, middle-class white men. So yeah, I got in through a lot of work experience, a lot, but simply because I had the support and I was able to. And then while I was still being basically a professional worker because there was no money, I set up a podcast called the Gas Station Podisode, which I don't think he's on anything anymore. But it was me,
Okay.
a journalist friend of mine, and my flatmate Phil. And we had the journalist to answer the hard questions. We had Phil, the everyman, and there was me in the middle, basically to reap the glory. And have leech off the profile of one and the idiocy of the other, and be the loud bombastic one. That was the plan, and it worked. The whole thing, it was an experiment in what was then new media, and the idea was I needed to get a job out of it. That was it. I needed it to get me places, to meet people, to get a job.
Yeah.
And eventually it worked. I ended up at I did a load of I had some paid freelancey bits come through because of it. I had a few different opportunities come my way. Some were good, some were bad, and then eventually I was driving with someone who I'd gotten to know quite well. This is also kind of dawn of Twitter stuff as well. So
right, okay.
2007, 2008 was when Twitter became this kind of, well, it's before then, I think, even a little bit before then, maybe afterwards. I can't quite remember. Whenever Twitter became when Stephen Fry made it famous and everyone was like, oh, we must get on Twitter. Yes, we must. It was kind of dawn of that, and the community there was so good. So, I'd met these people on the internet, but I'd never actually met them. But we'd had interesting conversations throughout the days, or I could send them work and ask for feedback. And someone offered me some freelance work, and so I messaged one of them and said, look, would you mind awfully? I don't know how much I need to charge for this because I've never had to do it. And he was like, charge this much, because that's what I do. And if they're asking you to do it, then the chances are they respect you as much. So yes, you get paid what I get paid. We had these. It was a great kind of spirit back then, and there were three of us that started off at the same time. There was Sam Burnett, who's now sub at Top Gear magazine. There's me, and there was a chap called John Slavin, and all of us got our kind of start via Twitter. Now John was, out of the three of us, Sam, one of the cleverest, funniest guys you will ever meet. If you're ever in a room with him, you'll know it. He's terrifyingly funny. I adore him. John he just grafted. The boy just worked, and he never stopped working. And he was the one. There was one mag, his Body Shop magazine. I'm not sure if it's still around because I never had anything to do with it.
Right.
But they would have a young gun do the cars for them, and the press offices kind of knew that. Yeah, we'll give them a car that's on fleet, and they can do creative stuff with it, and they'll fill the tubes, they'll get some experience, and then they'll get fed into the stream. John, for Body Shop magazine, managed to get the car. I think it's a Fiat Panda 100. He managed to get it into Thorpe Park on the off season and do a photo shoot with it around the park. He did all this mad creative stuff, but sadly, like a lot of creative spirits, he had some mental health stuff, and unfortunately, it won, which was it's a huge loss for the industry, huge loss because he was incredible, a huge loss for me because he was just a really nice bloke. It's a great shame. I think about him often because he was kind of pruned prune's the wrong word, edit that bit out. We lost him at a time where he could have started making waves and making a difference. But it was all because of Twitter. The three of us just we went out and we did a thing. John was the first to get a job. Sam got one, and then I sort of doggedly stuck to my guns, and it's all worked out. But it was a good time. But I just kept going and grafting. So the podcast got me a job, and then from there we started doing videos with the podcast. And I met a bloke on a press trip. It was a Volvo thing to try and drive from Marlow to Meyerhofen on a single tanker diesel when diesel was a socially acceptable fuel. You were probably in the third form. So I met this bloke, and me and my mate Phil were doing videos for the podcast, and it was all fun and games. These two boys rocked up from this website called CNET. One of them called Drew Stern, the other one called Rory Reid. both have gone on to do quite lovely things. Anyway, we kept in touch and we bumped into one another on various launches and all that. And then about 4 months after I got my first full-time job, I got an email from this, or got a Facebook message from this bloke Drew saying, "Hi, look, I need to talk to you. I've got a thing." So he took me to the pub, got me riotously drunk, and said, "We're launching this channel called XCar. It's going to be basically whatever you want to make. We're going to do high quality, super shiny, but your job is to make the kind of films that you want to watch." Because I have a sneaking suspicion, having seen some of your stuff, that you can host and you can do it well. What's next? And we want to build this channel. I mean, in their defense, I was cheap and I knew enough people to get it off the ground and not cost the earth. So if it was a horrible mistake, they could have just wrapped up and gone, "Well, we didn't lose that much money." But so I had I had a little bit of deliberation because I'd waited so long for a job, and then two of them turn up. One of them was for an established kind of agency, and the other one was this American thing called CNET, and I didn't quite know what it was, but it looked way more fun than writing 6 news stories a day for Autoblog. So yeah, took it, ran with it, and without it I wouldn't have a career. Like it was mega.
Yeah, definitely, and that's what became Carfection, isn't it? Eventually.
Yeah, so I'm not sure whether I'm allowed to tell the whole story.
Okay.
But basically, CBS, the parent company, owned xcar.com.cn, which is basically Chinese what car.
Okay.
And so they went, right, we'll have that, and we'll turn that into a car brand. And then something happened that meant we had 2 months to change the name.
Right.
And that was it. And so we had, at the time, we'd just lost our senior producer. We were moving offices, so everyone was working from home. And Roadshow by CNET, which was a sort of big rebrand of CNET's Cars thing in the States, was about to be launched. So all the money had gone to Roadshow. All of it. They were getting a massive staff. They were getting, they were going to do far more workaday things. So they were going to touch the supercar stuff, but they were also going to do, the F-150s and the Mavericks and the Chevy, the Honda Beats and all that nonsense. So all the eyes were on them for this big 2016 launch. And so yeah, Drew and I were kind of sat in a pub going, "Am I allowed to swear on this?"
Yeah.
Okay. We were going, "The fuck are we going to call this thing? What is it?" So we had 3 names, I think. One of them was too expensive. One of them was just no, and the other one was Carfection. And yeah, I will never forget the day we did that change, because I was in the office. Drew was away in Vegas at CES, because he was heading up basically all of the automotive video for CNET, which meant he had to be out because CES is a car show as well now.
Yeah.
We had our new producer, Charlie, starting. Charlie Rose, now at Top Gear, kicking ass, managing their video, really smart kid, love him to bits. And yeah, so Charlie was kind of wet behind the ears, and there's like, right, so that office we interviewed you in, that doesn't exist anymore. You're coming here. Oh, by the way, you interviewed for XCar. Since yesterday, we've been called Carfection. We couldn't tell you, but yeah, welcome. He got a bit of a shock, and then we had a placeholder logo because we didn't have time to think of anything. And Drew is too busy, and I have no idea how to draw things. The best I can do is a cartoon cow or a comedy penis on a whiteboard. And then like all of our followers went mental. We had like comments left on videos. Like it was gross. It was a really horrible day because I don't know how to manage production guys at all, because that's not my department. Like it really isn't. They're like, "Oh, so what have we got here? What have we got there?" I just know the camera make pretty film. I don't know how camera make pretty film. And then we had this tsunami of hate coming in. It was really rough. And in fairness, like a couple of people were like, "Don't worry, you're doing good work." One particularly noteworthy car hack who I won't drop the clang, but he was like, "Yeah, you guys are doing really good. Don't worry." Carfection's a shit name though. I'm like, "Thanks, buddy. Thanks." Thanks. But yeah, though that Carfection, bless it, lasted until the last year. Ticked over 1 million subs. So I was there from 2012 until 2017. So I was there for just over
Okay.
5 years. So
Yeah.
yeah, I joined in March 2012, and I left it at the end of May or the beginning of June 2017. And I had the best time there. It's one of those things that you don't realize how good it is until you've not got it.
Yeah,
Because
that
we
makes
had,
sense.
I was working with Drew the other day on something completely different, and we were talking. He was saying, because he was there the whole time, like he was there from birth to death. It was his show to run,
Yeah.
and he had to wrap it all up. And he was saying we spent easily 1.5 to 2 million quid of someone else's money making films, and no one told us what to do. Like, there was a very occasional sponsored thing, but there was no one in the US saying you have to cover this, you have to cover that. Like, the entire agenda is decided by the three of us in a room. Same when Henry took over, after I left, like, there was no one telling him what to do. So if he wanted to go and drive an upside down Mini somewhere, it would have been absolutely fine. Like, Drew, if something was too ridiculous, Drew might have called it. But if it was fun and it would have made good content, then he wouldn't, because what's the point? We had some great ideas that we were limited by budget. So I say we spent loads of people's money, I say we spent loads of someone else's money, but we still had to play within rules. So, we couldn't blow like 20 grand on closing Silverstone for a day, because that would be a quarter of the year's freelance budget gone. So the one thing is, I say we did 1.5 to 2 million quid. That's over 10 years. And that's including salaries for 3 people and freelance budget and buying gear and.
Yeah.
Right? So actually, we did quite well.
Yeah.
Like, I think what Drew put it best, like, no one's made a shoestring look quite so good. Because you get these shoots where things look absolutely epic, like the Castle Coombe days we did, where we'd have a racetrack and it would look amazing. We'd have 4 cars. Yeah, we'd have 4 cars. We'd then be doing a film on each car individually, and on the other side of the circuit there'd be another film going on. So the 800 quid that we'd spend on the track was divided between 6 films. Which all of a sudden everything becomes cheaper. We hire 3 camera guys, and that's then split 6 ways again. It does mean the edit costs get greater, but that doesn't matter quite as much, because we're making 6 films out of one day, so it kind of it splits quite neatly.
Yeah.
No, it was a really, really, really good time, and I left for a job at a now defunct in the UK site called Motor One. I was promised the Earth, and the Earth wasn't quite there. And it was around that time, like 2016, I had some pretty rough, like, mental health shit going on, and I wasn't entirely sure. I thought I needed a change of working environment, and it turned out I just needed about 6 months off and a shrink, and a rest, because I wasn't taking care of myself. And the job shift kind of exacerbated that, because I wasn't comfortable there, and I felt, I have to be very careful how I put this, but I felt that what I'd been promised wasn't being delivered. And, every week it felt like the goalposts were moving. We had some pretty unfair stuff thrown at us. We had it just wasn't for me at all. Again, I was basically promised. So let me rephrase that. I thought I would have XCar again, but with a team and a platform that had a telly show attached to it, because there was a TV network attached to the whole thing, and that just never transpired. Which is a great shame.
Yeah,
but yeah, so I lasted about 8 months there, I think. Yeah, it was July to February. I had a proper, what our parents would call a nervous breakdown. In the November that year, I could feel it coming. Like, I was on antidepressants, I was on anti-anxiety meds. I was seeing a therapist once a week, but I could just feel something coming, and I knew I was drinking myself to sleep every night, and I was looking for ways to painlessly off myself until the night I found it, and then I went, right, I need to leave this job, because I've just found how to do something rather than leave a job. Like, this is insane. And then, left there, went freelance, partly out of choice, but the choice is stay alive or not. So
yeah, definitely.
did that, but it worked out. It thankfully it worked, and I've got some great clients, had some great clients, went back to Carfection, did a load of fun stuff, met some interesting people, started talking about mental health more often, which has helped other people to also talk about it, to think about it themselves.
Yeah.
It's led to some great discussions, and it's led to other people going out and talking about it and being positive about it and not feeling awkward that they're going, oh, I'm having a pretty rough time at the minute. I think I'm a bit depressed, or I think I've got anxiety, or I think I've got this. Because from when you're and this is, I don't mean to sound condescending, because I used to hate it when people said stuff like that to me. But when I was your age, no one talked about mental health.
No.
Like, no
Makes
one.
sense.
It was this sort of forbidden conversation. I remember at uni, we lived with a guy whose name I forget conveniently, but he was a bit odd and a bit alternative, and he was really lovely. But then you'd hear this sort of hear whispers like, "Oh, he's on antidepressants. Do you hear he's on antidepressants? Oh my god, can you believe it? He's on
Yeah.
antidepressants." Like it was some sort of fucking like cross on his forehead, like someone had written "wanker" on his scalp. Like it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's far more widely spoken about, and people seem to acknowledge that you need a mental health day more. Don't get me wrong, there are some people, especially on Twitter, that will still go, how dare you, you're weak. I mean, I did a thing for the BBC News over lockdown, because I was on my own in this room, the one you're looking at. I'm not sure if you're broadcasting the video as well, but either way, I'm glad I put a top on. But I was in this room and chatting with the journalist about it, and it was all about bubbles and things like that. So they wanted someone who was on their own and needed a bubble. They wanted someone who had childcare and someone who had elderly care. I basically went, you know what? If bubbles hadn't happened, there is a chance that I wouldn't be here having this conversation. And I got hate mail on my Instagram, guy calling me like unspeakably rude words because I dared say this made me dangerously sad.
It's from experience. It is something that can be considered to kind of taboo a little bit, but
I mean, I think the taboo is dropping.
that's good.
It's not dropping perhaps as quickly as we'd like, because there are still arseholes on the internet. Sorry, I live on a main road, so if you hear crime happening, that's central London. It's a taboo that's dropping, and it's largely because people are talking about it. So if you're on Twitter, people like Chris Pollitt or Tacona. Lewis Warren at Tacona, it's just been nominated for a Rising Star in the Classic Car or Historic Motoring Awards, which is incredible. And Tacona is a brand based entirely around mental health. You buy a T-shirt, you wear it, it means someone can spot you and go, "Oh, Tacona, we're one of the same club. How are you doing?" And actually mean it. And proceeds go to charity, and it's becoming a thing, and it's fantastic. Anyway, sorry, we're talking about Creator, and I wanged off into mental health territory, but sort of a default at the minute.
It's an important thing to talk about, definitely. I agree. No, it's good, and I think that leads nicely into what you do at Caffeine Machine a little bit.
Well, so I no longer do it.
Okay.
From I think June 2021 until April this year, I was very honoured to initially co-host and then solo host a night called I Love You Man, which was started by Phil and Dan, the founders of Caff and Mac, in lockdown in 2020. And they basically they were aware that there was kind of a sort of mental health issue out there, and they also they wanted to get like-minded people, socially distanced but together. And they started interviewing people. So the first one was the summer of 2020. Guy called Alex Dainty, who's called Legless Garage on Instagram, and basically he was walking home from the pub one night, and a drunk driver hit him, and he lost both his legs. I think above the knee, not sure.
Jeez.
Sorry, some crime. Thank you, crime. Much appreciated. And they talked to him about what happened and how you square that away, because it's hugely life-changing. And then I was the second guest, and I talked about the kind of the thing I was telling you about. And then after that, they had Andy Palmer, who'd very recently been let go from Aston Martin, They had Quentin Wilson, they had Darren Turner, and then it was Christmas and they had to stop it. And then it came back the following year and they said, look, you do asking questions for a job, would you mind coming on board and asking questions with us? So 3 of us asking questions. So we had Julian Thompson, who was former design director at Jaguar and is now at GM. We had George North off of playing rugby for Wales. And we had Kaisel Salim, we had the Kaiser, which was mega. And Julian, they said to me, they went, oh, so look, we've got something to ask you. I was like, okay, cool. So the 3 of us would sort of prepare half each, sort of. So there'd be a little bit of overlap, but not much. And then we'd sort of be prepared in a slightly shambolic fashion. And yeah, they came out and said, yeah, could you just do this on your own? Because we've got somewhere else to be. So see ya. And then from there it was mine. And we talked to some really fascinating people, talked to some really interesting people. We had Richard Porter and Johnny Smith, each with their own stories. Johnny was talking about setting up business, Richard about Top Gear. We had David Gandy talking about, body image and fashion and being the bullied kid at school. We had Mike Brewer talking about online bullying. We had Vanessa Ruck discussing, losing, breaking half of your body. And then picking up and becoming this motorcycling YouTuber and dealing with pain, both physical and emotional, as a result of that. We had Joe Achilles talking about speeding fines. Well, one specific speeding fine. We had so many interesting people, all connected with automotive. Every single one of them. And each one with a different story to tell. And it was so lovely. It was such a privilege to do it. Sadly, budgets didn't allow, but by the looks of things, they're rebranding it because they've had a bit of a gap. I think they did 2 after me, and then by the looks of it, they've rebranded it and they're going a different direction with it. And I honestly, I wish them, I wish Caffeine and Machine the very best. If they asked me back, I'd be there like a shot, because it was honestly, it was one of my favorite things to do. It's all that you can wang around in classic cars and sports cars and whatever to you're green in the face, but I know that night made a difference, and I know that night helped people. So yeah, I was genuinely gutted, and I've said as much publicly, that it's no longer my thing. But whatever they do with it, I hope it kicks ass. And I do have something in the pipeline along those lines, but that's I need to have some meetings, and I had to have this morning off because I felt like death. So. It's on the list. It's on the list. Don't worry. The thing with I Love You Man, the only thing that really kind of stymied it was that we never recorded it, because we wanted the guests to feel like they could say whatever they wanted, and we wanted them not to worry about any legal kind of comeback from it, because it would be quite easy for someone to sit there and say something, slip of the tongue, whatever, or say something quite deliberate. I believe that X and Y happened, and then for someone to record it, stick it on the internet, and all of a sudden there's a defamation case on their doorstep. So anytime anyone tried to record anything, we were just like, nah, on the head, out you go. Stop that, silly person. But that was the only thing that stopped it, because you get people from all over the world going like, how can I hear this? How can I watch this? Like, I'm really sorry, you can't. So yeah, that's a bit of a bum.
Yeah, I attended the one. I only attended the one actually, but it was with Johnny Smith, and I found that really interesting. It was really, really good. So.
Johnny's is fascinating. One, because he's such a funny bloke. He's one of the funniest people you meet. Like there is not a dull bone in his body, but also because it's one of those things which it started happening to me of late, not as much as it does to him. I watched Johnny when I was at school. So I was, he'd be on Fifth Gear and I'd be getting home from school watching, the pointy-haired man do skids in cars or generally knob around. And now, to text him one day and go, hey, I'm doing a mental health night. Do you want to do it? It's quite weird to see that journey. But then him going kind of eschewing TV and being like, right, I'm going to set up a late break show. I'm going to do this my way, because why wouldn't I? And then to smash that. But he was, you were there. And we're not going to talk about the content of it, obviously, but you were there. What's happened since? What's happened as a result of that is both good and bad, and how he dealt with it is incredible. Also, the fact that we all learned that he has books of synonyms for cock is brilliant.
Yeah, 100%. It's funny. Just before we wrap up, have you got any? It's been really good to talk to you. Just one thing. But have you got any advice for any budding motoring journalists out there? Because it's obviously, as I mentioned at the start of the show, it's. I just got it as like a black box a little bit, but.
What do you mean by black box? This is why I pulled a funny face earlier.
Yeah,
I've never heard that expression used in anything other than
I just mean like
crash.
it's a bit of a. I just mean sort of the ongoings of the industry is a little bit unknown, possibly, and for people looking to get into it, like, oh, where do I start? Every person I've had on this show, regardless of what stuff they make, be it IT stuff, be it journalist stuff, I always ask them if you've got any advice for how you got into it, because it's there's always someone out there who's going to look at what you do and think, I want to do that.
Man.
So
I mean, at the minute, post-pandemic, everything's a little bit weird because it used to be like the route I took was, be on Twitter, be gregarious, do a podcast, but also do a ton of work experience. But now work experience is quite difficult to come by because post-pandemic, offices are smaller, teams are more spread out. The bit of advice I was given most of all by the most people is read everything and write lots. And by read everything, it's not read, What Car and Top Gear. It's read The Guardian and The Mail and What Car and Top Gear. Read, outlets you don't like. Read about stuff you're not that interested in, because that will inform your writing. And that depends if you want to be a writer. And you also write everything anyway, because that'll help you become more succinct. So I do a lot of, not a lot of, but I'm always, if someone says, look, can you read over my work and can you give me some advice? I will always say yes, because, it's something, few people did for me back in the day. And, the one thing is, save why have you used 4 words to say something that one and which one would do? Like, this is silly. You're wasting your word count, you're wasting space where you could be saying other things. And it's only by reading and writing and constantly doing both of those things that you'll get better at it. If you want to enter the journalism side of things, because there are now kind of 2 quite distinct camps, and they've been distinct for a while, but they've not there's less animosity now. I think the lines have been drawn. So if you want to get to the journalism side of things, there are plenty of outlets to go for. The only problem is there are some funding issues, in that you're there for the love of the job and you're there for the honor of working for some places. And so, I've been talking to people all over the industry, because it's something I care quite a lot about, that people get paid fairly. And the money when you start is rubbish, because you're bottom rung of a niche magazine in a niche industry. Everything's very niche and everything's very badly paid. But there are rewards that come with that. You do get to do some cool stuff that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do. You do get to play with some cool toys and meet some fascinating people and go to some amazing places. But you have to kind of stick with some rubbishy stuff for a while. If you want to go into the creation side of things, with that, I mean, a lot of outlets. I've between to be brutally honest, I've never worked full time for a magazine ever. Getting my work in print is rare. It's glorious. I love to see it, but I very rarely it happens to me. I joined at the beginning of the kind of online sweep. I remember doing work experience I had a Friday job for Auto Express, where Friday was publication day, and I'd take all of the copy out of the InDesign document that would go to the printers, put it on the website, and schedule it for like 3 a.m. on the Wednesday, when so it would go live the same time as the magazine. Which, when you think about it now, I mean, that was 2009. So when you think about doing that now, that's insane. Like, okay, we're going to hold this news because this news isn't important. No one at that point was thinking like, well, hang on, what if we go first? But yeah, at mainstream outlets, there's a lot of opportunity to do a lot of stuff, especially if you're keen, especially if you're good. To get good, you have to do a lot of work. I think Haymarket does offer an apprenticeship scheme, but it's hugely competitive. So you will need to, Skill number one: be able to string a sentence together. And be able to do it. You don't have to be Shakespeare. You don't have to be Clarkson. You don't have to be Steve Cropley. In fact, if you're not them, more's the better, because they already exist. But you do have to be able to kind of get there and see the point. And if someone says this is wrong, don't go, no, it isn't. You go, okay, why? What can I learn from this? But yeah, you do have to be able to string a sentence together. Increasingly, being able to take photos is a skill to have, but it's not necessarily something you'd need. So, say you're on Autocar, you're on Auto Express. They've got incredible photographers, and their job is to do that. So that's not the end of the world. Video is becoming increasingly important. Again, it's not an essential skill, but if you are terrified of being in front of a camera, just go in being aware that you might have to at some point. And then, script writing, again, that's kind of how I cut my teeth, because I was doing a little bit of writing before I started XCar, and then I spent 5 years just writing scripts, admittedly for myself, occasionally for other people, and now it's part of my job. I've written for TV shows and YouTube and all that stuff, but it's largely off the back of just constantly doing it. But it was Monday to Friday for 5 years. So yeah, with the journo side, so I know I'm waffling incredibly, but yeah, with the journo side of things, write all the things, read all the things. I did work experience, so call your favorite magazine, whether it's if it's some will say we don't do work experience, and that's not a slight on you at all. It's just they don't. Everything had to be suspended over the pandemic. I don't know which ones do and which ones don't. I did Autocar for a spell. I did PistonHeads when it was the same publishing house. I was there for 3 months. I was their de facto news writer, which was a hell of a baptism of fire. Yeah, well, because PistonHeads Comments is basically a toilet. Yeah, I did a bit of Whatcar and then Auto Express, and then I kind of bounced around to a few other places, an agency, Motoring Research, an agency. I ended up at MSN for 9 months as a paid, because I was useful to them, but that was only after having been to all these places, and they found some budget and we made it happen. So yeah, I'd go to places, do the work experience, get your face in front of people, because the one thing that will never ever happen, and I hate to break it to you, if you're lying on your bed going, I could be really good at writing, I'm a really good motoring journalist, I've just not written anything for anyone, I've not put my face in front of anyone in charge of purse strings, and really outside of my circle of friends, no one knows that I want to do this. That is not how you're going to get a job. God's honest, I had a placement year between my second and third year of university. I worked for a children's newspaper, and I was terrible at it, and I got fired. And I decided I wanted to work in automotive journalism, and I had the rest of a year to bum around, right? And I remember having just that thought. I was lying on my bed and like, why isn't anyone employing me? Why don't they know I exist? And I was like, because no one knows you exist, you moron. Like, this is very much a you problem. They will go on without you. You have to make sure you're indispensable. So it's that realization that, unless your face is there, you're not going to get anything out of it. There is another side to the coin, though. There is the creator side of it. There is the influencer side of things. The one thing to remember on that is, for every one Shmee, there's 10,000 people who want to be him. And there's less of a safety net there. If you say or do something stupid, that's you done. That's you cancelled. And the thing that a lot of people don't recognize about the influencer, the content creator side, is they work so hard, like so unbelievably hard, because not only have they got to be good at the scripting, they've got to be really good hosts, they've then got to edit their own stuff so they don't look like morons. I mean, I've never done that. I've always had an editor who knows how to shoot, light, produce, edit, do all that stuff, right? They've got to edit it, they've then got to manage it over all their networks. And for the first, 18 months to a year, they do that for free, because no one cares about them, because they're just another look at me, I'm next to a car. And like it's, you get some genuinely brilliant people who will just get passed over because the algorithm doesn't go their way, and they're all chasing the same thing. I know it's a really, really, really tough job, and I hugely admire anyone who sticks with it, and there are some really good guys coming up. I think the journo creator influencer divide is slowly coming together now. At the start, it really wasn't that pretty. I think mostly out of jealousy from the journo side. You get people who've worked all their life to get on a Ferrari launch, and some bloke turns up in his own Ferrari to the Ferrari launch, and you think, okay. There's lots of debate to be had. I think it's another conversation for another day. But if you want to do the content creator route, and I wouldn't be surprised if I'm not surprised when people do, because they see how impenetrable it is to get into journalism, and they see how the same voices. And I've said this before as well. We've had the same leading voices in this industry since I was an intern.
Makes sense.
Bar a couple who have come up and are now kind of top tier, but in the traditional mags, those voices haven't really changed at all. So when you look at that and you go, right, what do I do? Do I try and work to go up to a ceiling where I can then no longer pass because this person isn't ever going to leave, or do I go out and be my own voice? But it's an enormous quantity of work. So I've looked at it. I've spoken to people who do it. It's an investment. Everything's on you. Absolutely everything is on you. There is no safety net. If you get an opinion wrong and someone decides to roast you for it, that's on you. There's no senior editor to lean over and go, don't worry, it happens. But the reward is huge, because then you can do brand deals, you can do content deals, you can host commercial things with ease, and with that comes a lot of money, and comes a lot of notoriety. I'm in a strange position where I think an old colleague of mine was like, I'm sort of halfway between the two. I'll do 2,000 words for, a glossy magazine, but then someone says, "Oh, would you mind hosting some corporate stuff for us?" I'll be like, "Oh yeah, do that. Great." "Oh yeah, people are paying attention to your Instagram. Do more like that." "Oh, okay, I'll do that." So I'm in a weird spot. I think not entirely by design at all, just by complete accident. But I could never do what the creators do, because they just hustle. They work so hard, and I don't know what, because I've only ever met them when they get to a certain point, and then after that they kind of stick around, and they're really lovely guys. Like there's Motor Social UK, Natisha, she's hilarious and she's brilliant. Yep. There's Naveed for Speed. I love him purely because of his name. Like, what a pun. Well done. There's Gadgets Boy, and there's Gadgets John, and there's all those guys, and they're just hustling, man. They're just making it work for them. But yeah, they're two very different worlds. They're two very different disciplines, because one of them is entirely for you, one of them is for the good of an institution. I would say, no matter what you want to do or where you want to end up, keep reading, keep writing, but talk to people in the industry that you want to get into. So if you want to be a creator, reach out to these guys. If you want to be a journalist, reach out to them. I mean, God knows what use I would be, but my DMs and all the things are open anyway. If anyone has questions, if someone isn't willing to answer them, then they're probably not going to be someone you want to work with.
Makes sense. Yeah.
I spoke to someone when I was still at CBS, because we get people emailing in going, "Oh, how can I do this? How can I do that?" And I'd always reply and say, "Well, you do this and you do that." And I had this one chat go, "I emailed every single editor and you're the only one that got back to me." I'm like, what do you stand to lose from that, apart from face? Like, if there's no point in treating people like that. So yeah, reach out to the people you want to talk to. Always do that, because the worst thing that happens is they'll ignore you. But the best thing that'll happen is you get kind of exactly what you want. You get the advice you want. You might not necessarily get an internship, you might not necessarily get a job, but you can be pointed in the right direction. The only thing I wouldn't do is email someone who is obviously very busy and say, "Hi, I've written a 4,500 word essay on the intricacies of the Morris Marina door handle. Would you mind giving it a quick proofread?" The answer will be no. But asking for advice is fine.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thanks, Alex, for joining me on the Creator Spotlight podcast. It's been really good to talk to you about how you got started and what you do, and as well as some advice for people that are looking to get into the industry. It's really important to talk about. If people want to find out more about what you make and do, where can they find you online?
I am at A1 Goy on everything.
Everything.
On everything. I think there's there one as A1 Goy is always me.
Yep.
And if it's not, then congratulations, you industrious thief. I'm coming for you. I don't know what you'd want to. I don't know why anyone wants to pretend to be me. I am a shiny-headed man who lives in London. Yeah. But fair play to you. No, yeah, DMs are open on everything. If anyone has any questions, anyone wants to ask anything, more than happy to answer them. And one of my jobs this afternoon is to read through, because someone was asking about how to start out, and I've not read his writing. So I said, look, send me some articles over. So that's one of my jobs for this afternoon, as well as pitching for some work so I can continue to eat, because that is one of the realities of freelance. If you don't pitch for anything, you tend to be a bit shagged.
Alex's links will be in the description down below in the show notes and that sort of thing. So you can find more information about the interface at theinterface.uk. There's car news, tech news, all that sort of good stuff. Thanks for listening and watching this podcast, and we'll see you again next time.